Now that we are finally officially in the Christmas season, why don't we talk about some of the features of the Christmas stories that sometimes get overlooked? And so, if you're reading Luke's account of the gospel, the first people we meet are not actually directly related or like in the family of Jesus, but instead it's Zechariah and Elizabeth, whom we find out in Luke chapter 1 that they are righteous, blameless in the eyes of the law, and yet childless, which gives us this interesting window in the dichotomy that in an ancient culture that viewed children as evidence of God's blessing, you have people that are living what should be the most blessed lives, and yet the culture around them would have seen them as cursed, or maybe even being punished under the wrath of God. And that it says that they were old and barren, which is a common biblical theme. This is actually the sixth of seven immaculate conceptions throughout the Bible, from Old Testament and Genesis, and Abraham being the first, Abraham and Sarah, all the way up to Mary and Joseph, Mary being a virgin that conceives. Spoiler alert, right? Well, it says that an angel appears to him in the Holy of Holies, and it says this angel speaks to Zechariah saying that your prayer has been fulfilled in verse 13, and that you will conceive, that you will be able to conceive, and that you will have a son, and you will name him John. And Zechariah's response to that is, how do I know this is really going to happen? Which faces us with another really interesting dichotomy that's very relatable if we are honest with ourselves. That even when you pray for things, often we struggle to have the faith to see it come to pass. A really impressive challenge, a daunting challenge that I've received at different times and been reminded of different times in my life, is that if in the last 7 days every single thing that you prayed for came to pass, what would be different about your life? And at times it's convicting in different ways. On the one hand, of nothing, because I didn't pray for anything, is an uncomfortably common answer that I would have. And then there's well, my meals would be really blessed, and the hands that prepared them, right? Or that the transitional phases of the service would have gone on the weekends really, really well. Or that my gifts would have been used by God. Or that we would have had traveling mercies getting to point A to point B. And that'd be it. There wouldn't be anything glamorous or hard, challenging. There wouldn't be any major salvations in our family. There wouldn't, because of the fact that simply we didn't really ask. We haven't asked for those things. And so, on the one hand, it's a challenge you need to be praying. John Piper had this amazing and challenging tweet as well of that social media is going to stand and condemn us before the throne room of God in the modern age. That the reason for our prayerlessness has never been a lack of time, meaning that it's that we've wasted the opportunities that we did have to pray. It's not that we didn't have the opportunities. That instead of making time or redeeming time that we could have used for other things or at the same time as other things, we simply didn't engage. We were not prioritizing it. That lack of priority manifests itself in often just being distracted. That it's not important enough at any point of the day. That if you were to compare the amount of time you spend on social media versus the amount of time you spend in prayer and worship and reading of the Word, what would the ratio be? I can almost guarantee it's not 1-to-1. It's probably closer to like 10, 15, 20 to 1, maybe, is worse than that. For me, it depends on day to day, but I could be willing to put in like a 10 to 1 maybe, that I spend scrolling mindlessly through social media versus the amount of time I've spent with my face in scripture, with my knees bent towards God. Like, simply, that's where I am. And so I would hopefully, now that we are in the Christmas season, and that you have now an opportunity, that you would take this reminder and that you would focus more on A, praying, and B, making those prayers meaningful, valuable, not just praying over your meals or over your travels or to transition from one period of a weekend service to the next, but more than that, more significantly. Pray big things. Pray prayers that only God can answer, because then also activate your faith towards those things. One of the most common, let's say, complaint, challenge that I receive on this, or pushback that I receive on this, is the idea that people don't know how to pray. I don't know what I'm supposed to say, especially out loud. I'm afraid to speak out loud because I feel like it's going to be stupid, like I'm going to say the wrong thing. To that, I would encourage you in that the Bible teaches us how to pray. There's Psalms, obviously, is some of the most common places to reach into, but more than that, if you think about, like, today is the 30th that I'm recording this, you think about whenever this goes live, that day's date. Let's say it's the 2nd or the 8th. Pull open that proverb and just look at what it says. Those little pithy, easily memorizable statements. Commit a few of them to memory and meditate on them. And God, make this real. Financial stewardship, wisdom in my relationships, and patience, kindness, gentleness, generosity. Make those things real in me in a way that I can measure it from this week to next week. Or as well, throughout the New and the Old Testament, we see people praying in worship, rejoicing in praise for the things God has done, as well as asking God to deliver them from hardship and misery and challenges that they were facing, nationally or individually. That you have Paul in his writings and various other places in the epistles writing, saying that he's praying for the people there, and these are the things that he says, specifically asking God for these specific things with the expectation of these specific outcomes. We can see those things and follow their example. It's also notable that there's so many books out there that are prayer anthologies or tomes or collections from the Puritan eras and the Scottish Reformation and the German Reformation that Martin Luther had recorded, or various other people that are patriarchs in our faith. They wrote down, these are the ways that I pray. You can take those things and just read them. Those are blessed words handed down to us for us to learn. And then finally, don't overcomplicate it. Like we're so caught up in the performance aspect of it that we forget that God is a friend to us. He just wants to hear our voices. And that there is power in simply saying out loud the things that we desire of him, because he listens. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be in Elizabethan or Victorian English. And in some ways, what we see in like 1 Corinthians is, you know what, maybe it doesn't even need to be words. God understands our heart in a way that sometimes language fails us. The point is to pray. And so to find a way that helps you to do so. If for a long time, for me, it's been to walk. I walk my dog almost every day that I can, and when I take her out, I'll be walking and thinking about the things that I've read in Scripture recently, asking God, talking to God. Do that, maybe, or go for a drive, or there's so many opportunities here for you to be able to learn how to do this, and then practice it. And then honestly, go to your church and ask around. I guarantee, or at least I would hope, there's some people there that are confident in their means, modes, patterns of prayer, that they are willing to mentor you in how to do so. They are willing to teach you. All you have to do is ask, so that you can pair up these things, unlike Zechariah, who stands as something of a negative example for us, that he has prayers of impossible things, hard things, but not the faith to follow through with them. And notice, God fulfills that prayer even though he didn't have the faith necessary. I am definitely not on the side of this word of faith, name it, claim it stuff, that you have to have the faith necessary to grease the rails on something. Not there, because that's not biblical. God does sovereignly whatever he wants. And if that means giving a child to a couple that's too old to conceive, that's what he's going to do. If that means any number of other things, he's going to do it. The point is that you need to unite with him in his work. That you need to join his side on these things, so that what you want, what he wants, can be one and the same.